Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're on test 5. Mr. President, members of the press, distinguished guest, welcome. We are on test 5, section 3, the reading section, and we're going to be talking about, first of all, the sentence completion. So I'm going to go through this section. We're going to do each one. I'm going to go fairly fast, so I'm not going to give full etymologies and full definitions for every word. I'm going to be more thinking about how you would be doing this on the test and kind of getting closer to the speed that you're going to be doing it on. As always, if there's a word you don't understand, if there's something that you don't understand, look the word up, track its etymology, figure out what other words it looks like, what other words it relates to. It's really worth your time to spend 5 minutes on any word that you don't know, just kind of being a detective and tracking down where it came from, what it's doing, and what it means. Also, if there's a technique that I do that you don't understand, refer to the lessons where we teach those techniques. So especially the first 2 tests and then the lessons that went into tests 3 and 4. All of these things are explained. They're all demonstrated. If there's something you don't understand, if there's something that I say, a term I use that you don't understand, go back and take a look at those lessons, do a little practice, get familiar with it, and you should be all caught up. So we're going to jump right in here with number 1. For a long time, most doctors maintained that taking massive doses of vitamins was relatively harmless. Semicolon. Now, however, some are warning that excessive dosages can be what? Okay, so here we have a semicolon. Remember, that goes in the same direction, and then however shifts the direction. So what's my content word? I know it's going to be in the opposite direction of whatever comes before the semicolon, and the word is harmless or relatively harmless. So it's going to be the opposite of harmless. So I'm going to say harmful for my prediction. And this is number 1, so we expect it to be pretty easy. I'm looking for something that really just means harmful, and there it is, toxic. Healthy is the opposite. Inane, if you don't know, means silly or stupid. Wasteful means you're wasting things. Expensive means it costs a lot. Everybody should know that. So that's a pretty straightforward one, and that sort of gets your feet wet. Oops, don't need to do that. Number 2, in Jamaica Kincaid's novel Lacy, the West Indian heroine blank her employer's world, critically examining its assumptions and values. Now this is one where if I wasn't sure what type of word would go in a blank, I could take a quick look at the answer choices and see that they're all verbs. They're all third person, singular, present verbs, and that's enough to know. Okay, we have a comma here. Remember, that goes in the same direction. It's one of those phrases that describes what she's doing. It just kind of adds more color, so she's really giving us a definition here. So the West Indian heroine blanks her employer's world, and what does she do? Well, she critically examines its assumptions and values. So I don't really need to even pick a word, do I? I can just say what it goes in a blank means critically examining assumptions and values. And that's what I'm looking for. Okay, idealizes is the opposite. If you look at something critically, you're not idealizing it. Avoids would mean she's not engaging with it, so that's also sort of opposite. She's critically examining it. She's getting right in there, thinking about it. Beautifies, also opposite. It's not critical. Excludes, doesn't really make sense. It's the same sort of thing as avoids, and so it scrutinizes. And notice, because this is easy, the wrong answer choices aren't that difficult. They're pretty obviously wrong. Idealizes and beautifies mean close to the same thing in this context, so that's a good reason to cross them out. Same thing with avoids and excludes. It sort of gets to the idea that she's not engaging or she's not dealing with these things. Scrutinize, if you don't know the word, means to look at something really, really closely. And I've said this again, I'm going to say it before, but one trap you don't want to fall into, when you get to this point, and you think idealizes, avoids, beautifies, excludes, and you know all those words, but you don't know the answer. You don't know scrutinizes. You need to be confident about the fact that A, B, C, and E are not the answers. At that point, you say, that's not what I predicted. What I predicted was something that means critically examining. And it's not there, except for scrutinize, and I don't know what scrutinize means. That's when you pick it. That's when you say, it's good that I don't know what it means because it probably means the right answer. I do know what A means, I know what B means, I know what C means, I know what E means, and none of them mean anything like critically examine. When you get to that point, don't be afraid to pick the word that you don't know. A lot of students lean towards words that they know, even though in the back of their mind, they really know that it's not right. It's not what they predicted. It doesn't fit in there. They try to cram it into the answer choice because they know the word and they're more comfortable with it. Get comfortable with the idea of picking words that you don't know, because it's going to happen more often than you think. Okay, let's take a look at number 3. The frequent name changes that the country has undergone blank the political turbulence that has attended its recent history. Okay, I think a verb goes in there, but this is also a good one where it might be helpful to look at the answer choices. And I can see almost all of them, or 3 out of 5 of them, use a preposition. And so that makes sense, because you could say it means something. I saw contrasts with in there. And so I could see that that would work with the blank. It has the name changes contrast with the political turbulence. That doesn't really make sense as an answer choice, but it makes sense grammatically, and that's the sort of word that I'm looking for. Once I know that, I can make a better prediction. So what I have is name changes, political turbulence. Now this is a really interesting one, right? We've seen this before. I crossed that out. I didn't mean to cross it out. I meant to underline it. We've seen this before. The word in the blank is actually the direction word. So they're asking me to link these two ideas, and now I need to say, do they go in the same direction or do they go in the opposite direction? Well, let's see. Frequent name changes and political turbulence. That sounds like the same direction to me. You're changing a lot. Turbulence means if you've ever been on an airplane and the plane starts bouncing up and down, that's turbulence. It means things are kind of wild, they're all over the place, they're chaotic. So frequent name changes and turbulence go in the same direction. So I'm going to say the name changes, I don't even know what the word is, same direction. So it'll say the name changes mean, or the name changes show, or the name changes demonstrate the political turbulence, something like that. And that's what I'm looking for. But really all I need to know is that it goes in the same direction, because when I look at these answer choices, opposite direction, opposite direction, opposite direction, jeopardize means to put something in danger, so that's definitely opposite. Now, testify to and sustain, they both go in the same direction, but they mean something a little different, so now we have to drill down a little closer. Sustain, we talked about before, with the word sustenance. So sustain means to keep something up, to keep something going. If you've ever played piano, there's a pedal, and it makes the note that you play keep going. It's called the sustain pedal. So to sustain means to keep it going. To testify to, you might not be familiar with this, it sounds like a courtroom thing, but to testify to means to demonstrate or to show, which is what we were predicting. So if you know those words, you can choose C. If you don't, though, if you only know the word sustain, let's try sustain in that answer choice and see what happens. The frequent name changes that the country has undergone sustain the political turbulence that has attended its recent history. Now we think about that. Which way does it go? Do you think the name changes cause the political turbulence, or the political turbulence cause the name change? If you think about it like that, it makes a lot of sense that the political turbulence is what will cause the name change. You're not going to generate political turbulence just because you change the name. Or maybe you would, but it's not usually how things work. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So when I drill down, I can see I'm actually looking for something a little more specific than simply the same direction. What I'm looking for is a causal relationship. The turbulence causes the name changes. Therefore, the name changes show the turbulence. They're the cause, and you can look at the cause and say, well, it must have, or sorry, they're the effect. You can look at the effect and say, oh, it must have a cause. It must demonstrate something, and political turbulence is what it demonstrates. Okay, number 4. Brachiopods, clam-like bivalves of prehistoric times, were one of the most blank forms of life on Earth. More than 30,000 species have been blank from fossil records. Now this is actually pretty easy to predict, right? Because we have a colon that goes in the same direction. I have more than, so it suggests it's a lot. So for the first blank, just based on more than and the colon, I know they're talking about a lot. So they were one of the most numerous, I'll say, or plentiful, or I don't know, but there's lots of them. Now, we can easily do the second blank. More than 30,000 species have been fossil records. If you know what they are, this makes it pretty easy. We can say have been discovered, have been found, and it's the passive voice, have been counted because there's a lot of them. Anything that indicates we know there's a lot of them. Anything that indicates this is how we know that there's a lot. So let's see. Oops. It doesn't want to let me do this. Okay, I'm just going to delete my annotations and come down here so you can see it. But remember what we said was numerous and then discovered. Okay, plentiful works. Remember, 2 blank questions. Take them one at a time. Plentiful works. I'm not going to cross it out. Ornate does not work. Ornate means very fancy, having a lot of ornaments, having a lot of decorations. Multifarious means there's lots of different kinds. So that's close, but I'm not going to cross it out. Scarce is the opposite. Anachronistic, if you don't know what it means, we talked about this before, it means it's out of place in its time. So it's from the wrong time. Doesn't make any sense here, so we're down to 2. And we have cataloged, which means discovered, and subtracted, which means removed from. I can see it's got to be C. Subtracted doesn't make sense. Cataloged from fossil records. Catalog is a noun you probably know if you've ever seen a catalog. But it's also a verb. To catalog something means to make a list of it and to put everything down on a list and say how many are in each category. Category is the same root as catalog.